So welcome everyone. One of the things I've decided is we should have a ACGA chapter meeting before every lecture because this is great to see so many people here today. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about glass engraving, and as some of you have probably noticed, I'm going to talk about glass engraving as well at our Brilliant Weekend in September. So I'm going to mix things up enough so that it'll be a different presentation in September. You won't be hearing exactly the same one again. But this year, I'm very excited that we were able to put on an exhibit of examples of really masterwork by the Dorflinger companies and by their competitors in glass engraving. It's, I think, kind of at the peak of the pyramid in terms of the skill and talent of the workers in the American cut glass industry. Glass cutters and glass blowers were certainly skilled craftsmen, but the engravers were true artists. And what they did was really drawing three-dimensional images on the surface of the glass using glass engraving techniques. And their artistry, I think, is something that really was at the top of the group in terms of the workers within the industry in the 19th and early 20th centuries. So I want to talk a little bit today about the three techniques of glass engraving that were used by the Dorflinger companies and their competitors during this time period. And those are copper wheel engraving and stone wheel engraving, and then finally rock crystal. And I want to start with the equipment that was used to do this work. This year, in addition to the special exhibit on glass engraving, we also made some modifications to our permanent exhibits that I think really enhance our ability to explain and interpret how engraving was done and the quality of the work that these workmen did. So upstairs we moved our copper wheel engraving lathe, and that's shown in this picture, and we set it up as these would have been set up in the factory. So the workers would be in front of a window, they would get good natural light coming in, and they could see the work that they did. The engraving table that we see here was donated to us by the American Cut Glass Association, and it was made for the ACGA by a good friend of ours, Elmer Hewells, up near Corning. So Elmer built this stand for the engraving lathe. The lathe itself was owned by Joseph Hasselbauer, who was a very famous engraver in Corning. He was the head engraver at the Hawks Company, but most of these engravers came from Bohemia, Czechoslovakia, Austria, Germany, and they really brought their skills and their abilities with them from Europe. And this was Hasselbauer's machine. And in addition to working for companies within the industry, many of these engravers also had home shops where they would train others to become engravers and where they would do work for other companies or for other individuals. That tradition really literally carries on today as well. Now, before the advent of electricity, copper wheel engraving lathes were set up with a foot treadle operation. So Elmer built this stand with the foot treadle, so the engraver would literally have to pump the flywheel to turn the engraving lathe, in addition to concentrating on doing the engraving himself. You'll see some bottles and jars there on the table. With copper wheel engraving, the engraver uses copper wheels or discs of varying sizes and shapes and dimensions to do the cutting on the surface of the glass. And the copper wheel will provide the pressure, but you also apply an abrasive, typically emery powder or carborundum mixed with oil, and you apply a drop of that to the copper wheel, and that's what really does the cutting into the surface of the glass. So you have all of the materials on the workbench here that the engraver would need, including the padded pillows for his elbows to hold the work steady. Now, copper wheel engraving is work that is done what we call under the wheel. So the worker will hold the object under the copper wheel. He can look directly at it and see the cutting that he's doing onto the surface of the wheel. And as he's cutting, he will apply a drop of the oil and the abrasive onto the wheel that will actually do the cutting work. And in addition, here's the set of wheels that a skilled engraver would use. And they vary from 3 to 4 inches in diameter. You can see some of these larger wheels at the top of the rack here that would be used for straight lines or for deeper cuts. But some of these wheels on these lower spindles are not much bigger than the head of a pin to do very fine and very detailed work. The copper wheels are soldered onto the end of individual spindles, and then when you change the wheels out, you pop one spindle out and you put the new spindle in. And copper wheel engraving gives these engravers the ability to do very fine, detailed works. This is the tool that is used to do the coats of arms on the White House glassware, for example, or monograms on glassware as well, or in many cases, woodland scenes or depictions of buildings or pieces of machinery like locomotives. And very fine and very delicate work. The second type of engraving is stone wheel engraving. And this is a stone wheel engraving lathe here from the Dorflinger factory. Now, the Charles Hadamack, who did a book on British glass in 1991, credits Stevens and Williams with developing stone wheel engraving in about 1890. And originally, according to Hadamack, they tried to apply or use stone wheels on the copper wheel engraving lathe. But there were two problems with this. Number one, those lathes just were too delicate. They couldn't hold up to doing the work with larger stone wheels. And second, the other problem was foot treadle operation didn't work very well because you couldn't get the speed and the consistency that you needed to do the heavier stone wheel engraving. And stone wheel engraving lathes use a variety of smaller stone wheels. And in addition, you have a fixed spindle on the end of the engraving lathe, and the individual wheels are threaded with a lead insert in the center and are actually screwed onto the end of the fixed spindle. So you're not changing out the spindles as you are on the copper wheel engraving lathe. And the stone wheel engraving lathes gave the workers, the artisans, the ability to do heavier work than the copper wheel engraving lathe, but it also gave the worker the flexibility to do curves and designs, particularly floral designs, that simply weren't possible using the heavier cutting equipment that was normally done in the Dorflinger factory. The big heavy wheels were great for geometric designs, not so great for doing finer, more detailed work like floral designs, leaves, and we'll see some good examples of stone wheel engraving. Now, stone wheel engraving came to the Dorflinger factory in 1896 when Dorflinger hired an Englishman named Walter Graham, who came from the Stourbridge district where Stevens and Williams was located as well. And he brought stone wheel engraving to the Dorflinger factory and produced some famous examples that we'll see in just a few minutes. So those are the two major types of engraving. The final type of engraving that we'll see is rock crystal, where you start by doing cutting to create a design, whether it's large pillars, deep cuts in the design. Then you engrave floral designs onto that and then polish the results so that you end up with a very polished or shiny surface. Now, if you look at stone wheel engraving can be left in its natural, more matte finish, so like a grayish finish, or it can be highly polished. And Dorflinger labeled many of his stone wheel engraved designs rock crystal as well. And we'll see some really famous rock crystal examples in the exhibit that we have this year. This is the stone wheel engraving department at the Dorflinger Factory. So you can see the lathes are larger, they're belt driven off of a line shaft that by this point would have been electrically powered. And so these are the stone wheel engravers working in the Dorflinger Factory. Pay particular attention to this tankard jug here. You'll see an example in that exact shape done at the Dorflinger Factory with stone engraving. And this photograph is of Art Firmstone. Art Firmstone was a cutter at the Dorflinger Factory. After the Dorflinger Factory closed in 1921, John Dorflinger set up the first Dorflinger Glass Museum and a shop in his father's general store at the bottom of Charles Street. It's the big gray building that sits right down at the bottom of Charles Street. And Art Firmstone would do cutting to demonstrate to visitors to John's shop and museum. And here is Art doing stone wheel engraving. So you can see the small stone wheels here. The stone wheel engraving differs from copper wheel engraving in that the work is done above the wheel. So you can see he's holding the piece against the wheel. He's cutting on the back surface of the piece. And I think this cutting arrangement here with this frame is one of the frames that Ray Laturnus ended up using, and I think it's one that we have downstairs that Kathy donated to the museum. But this was Art doing demonstrations of cutting, which was really stone wheel engraving in John's shop. Okay, now I want to start talking about some of the uses of copper wheel engraving, and I want to go back to the early years within the industry, the 1850s to 1870s. Typically what you would see in those years is relatively simple cutting designs on the pieces. And these three pieces, the covered comport, the decanter, and the goblet here, are good examples where you have a geometric diamond design that alternates with a flat panel below it, and then that is reversed as you go around the piece with the flat panel above, and then the diamond geometric cutting design below that. And to enhance the decoration, make the piece a little bit more interesting, often what the glass manufacturers would do is add copper wheel engraving to that blank panel. And so here you see grape leaves engraved on the blank panels of the pieces, and it just added a little bit more interest and a little bit more excitement and finish to the product that otherwise would just be a little bit plainer and a little bit more simpler. Now, copper wheel engraving was used for monograms, often for family crests as well. These three examples are in the engraving exhibit upstairs, but one of the challenges with engraving is it's difficult to exhibit. It's hard to see some of the fine details, so I thought with the presentation today, I'd give you a few little closer up views of some of the work that it's a little bit more difficult to see in the cases, and at least it points you in the direction of what to look at when you're looking at the exhibit upstairs. So here is a family crest on the decanter. So it has a shield with chevrons and the three dots, but what makes this kind of interesting is the hand holding the fish at the top of the crest. So we don't know whose family this crest was, but it's really kind of an interesting addition. Engraving, and it highlights one of the really important uses of engraving, and that was to personalize objects. So if you were buying a set of glassware, you might want your family crest engraved on the glassware. Engraving was the way that you would add that detail to the piece. Here's another example. This is in our early glass gallery. It's a celery vase. This came from the John and David Dorflinger collection. It has a monogram done in simple flute design. and also with engraved grape leaves and vines on the individual panels running vertically up and down the panels. So another nice example of how you could take a simple design and simple cutting and then embellish it with some nice additional detail with the engraving and also with the monogram, personalize it. And this is from the Brooklyn period. You'll see on the base of the celery vase the Brooklyn star, the large stars with the fans in between, very characteristic of New York glass in the 1850s and 1860s. And all of these initial pieces would have been typically in that 1856 to 1860 time period. Here are a couple of other nice early decanters, and these have an interesting harlequin design engraved on that middle band around the center of the decanters. So you have a quart decanter on the right, a pint decanter on the left, again cut with simple flute designs above and below, and then with that central panel that's engraved with a nice kind of diamond or harlequin design. Adds more interest and a little bit lively design to the piece. This is another example from the John and David Dorflinger collection. It's a goblet made for Eugenia here. And this one has insects, mayflies, and ferns and grasses in the design. Another nice early Brooklyn piece, Brooklyn Star foot on the base, and just another nice example of the way you can take a simple piece and add engraving to add real interest to the design. You can also see on this piece the roots growing down below the ground surface here at the very base of the piece. There are a number of examples that we call the root pieces that are done with that design, where you actually show the roots growing down below the ground. And here's a detail where you can definitely see the mayflies on the piece. And again, just a nice example of early engraving on what would otherwise be a fairly simple design. Here are two other examples, where you see butterflies and birds on these early pieces, engraving on the foot to add some more interest to the piece. So a very simple shape, but embellished with interesting designs in terms of the flowers, the vines, the leaves in the design. And there's a pair of these in the exhibit that are also from the John and David Dorflinger collection. And here's a detail. You can see the bird here. You can see the butterfly there on the back as well. And here's another view where you can see the ferns and the water plants and the butterfly at the top as well. A lot of these old ideas carried forward. If many of you are familiar with some of the work that Ray Laternis did, Ray did butterflies on many of his pieces, and much more detailed and much more exquisite than these early examples as well. Here's another nice example of an early Brooklyn or early White Mills piece, a sugar bowl, a covered lid, with gadrooning around the top of the bowl and the bottom of the lid, but with nice examples of berries and ferns engraved around the sugar bowl and on the lid as well. This one also has a really interesting stem. It looks kind of like a Hershey's Kiss, and we see that same stem on a wonderful pair of blanks for vases that came down in the Dorflinger family, and that was in Helen Barger's collection as well. And that's how we were able to identify this as an example of Dorflinger's work. This is another relatively early piece, again, simple in design, Brooklyn Star foot on the base, but a plain bowl. And then what really makes this special is the addition of this engraved geometric border going around the piece, and especially the three little vignettes that you see in the ovals of the piece. Here's the first one with a church and a tree. Here's a second one with another tree, and it looks like the road going in front of the tree. and then third with the house and yet another tree as well. So just a really special example of how engraving can be used to personalize and make a really unique piece of art. I think you can see with some of these pieces how these people were more than just craftsmen, they were really true artists. Yeah, Betty?
How did they get such straight lines? Did they have something to level?
Not really. For the engravers, what they'll do is hold the piece, they'll steady it because their elbows are in those pads, which gives a pretty stable foundation, but then you're maneuvering the piece to get those nice straight lines. Now, what the engraver will do is draw out the design on the piece before they start to work. So they will actually do like an ink drawing of the design. They'll hold that inside the bowl of the goblet, and then they'll trace on the outside over that design, so they have a drawing of what they're going to do on the outside surface of the glass. That will guide them, but in terms of their ability to do those nice straight lines, that's really done by hand. And that's where those larger wheels will come in handy, because they're good for doing a nice straight line in the design.
Was the wheel on that one, did it allow them to have two prongs or whatever, to let them do those lines at the same time?
No. If you look at the rack, every spindle has one wheel. You don't have a double wheel to go through and double track it. So, and that becomes really important when you look at some simple engraved designs, but where you have all of these perfect parallel straight lines, and they look deceptively simple, but those would have been some of the most difficult pieces for engravers to do. Okay. And here's just a little more close-up on the detail here of the house and the tree, and then with the little beads going around the outside of the circle. So this is a neat little special piece. An engraver obviously spent a lot of time and effort to do something that was a really unique piece of art. Here's another good example of how copper wheel engraving was done to add important engraving coats of arms to important orders. So this wine rinser is from the Franklin Pierce presidential set made in 1853. Most likely that set was produced by the Brooklyn Flint Glass Works, one of Dorflinger's competitors. 1853 we think is a little too early for Dorflinger to have produced this. He was still just getting started making commercial products. So this one would have been just a little bit early, but you can see here the presidential coat of arms with the eagle, the shield, and then the rest of the design would have been more traditional grape leaves and vines going around the piece. And again, simple flute design in terms of the cutting on the piece, cut foot as well, but how it really gets made special with the engraving. So this is a nice, good example of how engraving is used to personalize really important sets like presidential glassware.
Jim, with that, it has the corkscrews. Now, because the plate that he's using to engrave is steady. He's moving the glass to make those corkscrews.
Yes.
So he's moving the glass around
Yes.
and around and up and down.
Yes, exactly. And probably doing them in short little segments as he's doing that. Yeah. So again, kind of looks simple, but there's a complexity in terms of the design and the execution. Here's a close-up of the presidential seal on the Pierce set. It's kind of interesting because if you look at the presidential seal for the Pierce set, one of the things you'll see is you have a palm frond here, and you have a laurel branch here. A little bit different than what we're typically used to. And then if you look at the eagle, got the head is up and the wings are up as well, and E pluribus unum engraved on the banner. So there's an awful lot of work on that coat of arms. Just to show you an example, here's a comparison with the Lincoln White House set done by Dorflinger in 1861, you can see what Dorflinger did. He took the presidential coat of arms for the Pierce set, and he embellished it and enhanced it and changed it a little bit. So what do we have? Now we've got the traditional olive branch in the right talon, and you've got the arrows in the left talon. Wings are now flatter, head's a little bit flatter, but same basic design with the same kind of banner with the words E pluribus unum on them. The other really innovative element that Dorflinger added as well is this beautiful ivy border that goes around the top of the piece. So simple cutting with fine diamonds and these ovals just above the fine diamond cutting. But what makes the Lincoln State Service so special and why it was popular for 30 years in the White House is the engraving work on the piece that really adds to the design. Okay, these two pieces are what we call Lincoln lookalikes. So if you look at these two pieces, the cutting is exactly the same and the shape is the same as the Lincoln Service. You have the fine diamond cutting, you have the ovals, you have the ivy border going around the top. But instead of the presidential coat of arms, here you have a circle with a monogram. And the monogram is, let's see, MWC. And you have a wine glass and then a hollow stem champagne glass. The design on the Lincoln foot is also a distinctive one, and you have that repeated on these two pieces as well. We have 2 champagne glasses and 2 wine glasses on exhibit upstairs in this special exhibit, and we are very grateful to the Everhart Museum for having donated these 4 pieces to the museum. So thank you again, Nancy. They're great additions to the museum collection. And what this also helps show is that the Lincoln Service was so popular that pieces were made in the shape and design for private individuals who wanted glassware just like the president had, but with their monograms on them as well. So great examples, wonderful addition to the museum collection. These two, we have 2 of these goblets on exhibit upstairs as well, the Chittenden goblets. So on one side you have this nice floral border and the name Chittenden. And if you look at the design of the cutting, it's pretty similar to the Lincoln Service. So you've got fine diamond cutting on the bottom, but you've got the ovals, but here the ovals are vertical rather than horizontal. And we have found examples in finger bowls of designs that were done with the ovals horizontally and also vertically. So we think, again, this is a Dorflinger piece that was a takeoff on the Lincoln design, but done as a special order for private individual, Mr. Chittenden. And here's a close-up of the engraving on the front. And then what's really fun about these is the woodland scene that's on the back, where you've got the rabbits and the trees. So it's just a really neat and kind of fun piece. Now, there was a New York congressman, Simeon Chittenden, at about this time period. So we don't know for certain if these were part of a set made for him, but we suspect they probably were. He was in the right place at the right time, would have known about the Lincoln set, and good candidate to have ordered something special for him. And we love to see these pieces that have the woodland decorations. They just really add a special touch to the engraved pieces. Here's another example. Patriotic themes were very popular, particularly in the 1860s, going into the 1870s, around the time of the Civil War. So this wine ewer or wine jug has an eagle with the flags, again, E pluribus unum around the top, stars in the decoration, Brooklyn Star foot down at the bottom. Very simple piece, but it's all about the engraving, and especially the eagle and the flags in the center. This is another one of my favorite examples of Dorflinger glass. A simple ewer in a classic form with hollow diamond cutting around the neck, plain on the bottom, but with the engraved fish and water plants on the piece. There are several of these ewers around. The Dorflinger Glass Museum and the Corning Museum of Glass have two great family examples. Theirs have hollow diamond cutting on the top, hollow diamond cutting in the center, lower part of the center part of the ewer. This is the only one that has the engraved fish, and it's just a really nice special touch added to the piece. But the form and the shape is just so classic and so perfect. Wonderful example of pieces done late Brooklyn, early White Mills time period. Here are a couple of other nice early decanters. I love the shape on these with these rounded forms, simple flute cutting on the neck, Brooklyn star foot, and then the engraving with the bands of garlands of flowers around the top, and then these simple dots, and then a really elaborate monogram with the T monogram on the piece. So great shape. I think great French influence on these pieces. Wonderful example of Dorflinger's work, most likely early White Mills, and just a simple design, but where the engraving really adds a great deal to the pieces. We also have found stemware done in exactly the same way with these simple dots, the floral bands around the top, and then these elaborate monograms as well. This is an interesting little mug. This was a gift from Christian Dorflinger to John Mandeville. John Mandeville was his head carpenter. He's the man who built the building we're in now. He built the silk mill in Hawley as well. This has John's tag, which talks about how this was made by Dorflinger as a gift to John Mandeville, and it has grapes and hops and flowers in the three ovals around the mug. So again, nice, charming little piece with simple cutting around the base, but the engraving really enhances the piece and adds to it. This is an unusual form, a shaving mug with floral engraving on the sides and an HH monogram on the front. So kind of an unusual form. We don't find very many shaving mugs, but this is a nice little example as well. There are several goblets that were done by the Dorflinger companies in the early years and that have really elaborate engraving designs on them. This is the JJ goblet. So you can see the monogram JJ here with wreath and floral designs around the monogram. You see engraved designs on the foot of the piece as well. And here you see around the back of the piece leaves and vines engraved as well. So the engraving on these is really quite exquisite and really adds to the interest and the excitement of the piece. This came from John and David Dorflinger's collection as well. The other interesting thing to look at this, here you've got a Dorflinger label. Now, Dorflinger labels shouldn't be on this piece. This is this is an early White Mills piece, long before Dorflinger started using the paper labels, but this came from John and David's collection. John would put those labels on pieces that he knew were genuine examples of Dorflinger glass because he wanted people to know that. So we see labels on pieces where there shouldn't be a label, and this is a good example of that. This is the JK goblet. This one's a little fussy and busy for my taste, but again, you've got the monogram here, floral designs, band around the top. Here you've got that nice early characteristic Dorflinger stem on the goblet, and then designs on the side, and designs going around the back as well. And this one, in contrast, I really like this one because I think the design is a little bit simpler and a little bit more effective, where you have these the swags going around the goblet, and then individual floral designs within the swags on as they go around all of the sides. So very simple in terms of the glass itself, but exquisite in terms of the detail of the engraving on the glass. This example here, the shape of this glass matches a set of glassware that Dorflinger exhibited at the Philadelphia exhibition in 1876. And that set is really a terrific set. You had different hunting and animal scenes going around the top. This example has the fine diamond cutting at the bottom of the bowl, and then around the top you have a floral band that goes around the design, and that floral band matches the engraving on a cologne bottle made for Nellie Dorflinger, one of Christian Dorflinger's daughters. And here is a close-up of the engraved floral design around the top. Another example. Another example. Jack Dakey had a set of these, both wine glasses and cordials, at the Honesdale show one year. I just couldn't believe it when he brought those out. They're really terrific examples, and nice connection to the Philadelphia exhibition as well. This is a neat piece. This is in the exhibit upstairs, and it's also from the John and David Dorflinger collection. We believe this was a sample piece in Dorflinger's retail store in New York City. And it has 3 different engraving designs for monograms. So if you came into the store and said, I want to order a set of glassware, they would bring this out and say, well, please pick the design for your monogram that you would like to see on your glassware. And so you have this really ornate design here. You have this design, more classic, simpler, and you have this design as well. And we see some examples of these in some of the monogram glassware that we see. Particularly, I'll show you one in a few minutes that was from Charles Henry Dorflinger's table service as well. Done in heavy flute, so simple design. You see a lot of these plain, but it's really nice to have a sample piece with the different monograms on them. All right, now I'm going to wrap up this part of the presentation with, I think, my hands down favorite example of Dorflinger's copper wheel engraving. It's either Dorflinger or it's New England Glass Company. Those are the 2 companies in the 1870s that had the ability to produce a piece like this. And this is really a masterwork of copper wheel engraving. And I think it's one of the stars of the show upstairs. You have woodland scenes going all around the bowl of this comport. So classic Dorflinger or New England Glass Company shape and form in terms of the bowl, the scallop top, the stem, the foot. But what really makes this an exceptional example is the engraving around the bowl. And so you have deer everywhere and around the piece, and then you have trees, woodland scenes that go all the way around the bowl. Here's looking into the bowl from the top where you probably get the best view of it, and you can see the deer, you can see the ground, you can see the trees. Some of them are these lighter trees, some of them, if you look at the engraving in the trunks of those trees cut into the glass about 1/4 of an inch. It's really remarkable example, and I think one of the finest examples of engraved glass from the late 19th century. And thank you very much, Chet. We're indebted to you for having steered it our way.
Well, we were overcharged.
I think this is the one piece of glass that I bought from Chet where when I said I want it right away, Chet said, "Oh, really? Oh."
Wrong answer.
And I promptly grabbed it. So, yeah. Here's another view as well. But the workmanship on this is just amazing. And again, this is the kind of work that would have been done by those Bohemian engravers. They did these kinds of woodland scenes and animal scenes in Europe as well. They would have brought that tradition and history with them. And this piece probably would have taken months to make. The workmanship is that detailed.
And that would be used for fruit?
Probably fruit, yeah. A lot of compotes were used for a stewed fruit dessert mixture. This is a pretty big bowl, so it might have been used for fruit as well. Yeah.
Who would want to put anything in it?
In it, I know, that's right. Yeah.
Not-
Now, this is another neat piece. This is not Dorflinger. So I've got a few non-Dorflinger pieces scattered throughout, but I just really liked this piece for a couple of reasons. This is by Libby. And so it's a footed loving cup. It's in Libby's shape number 373, and it's cut in Libby's Colonna pattern. So around the back and the other two panels, you have the fairly simple design cut Hobstar foot. But again, what makes this special as an interesting presentation piece is the engraving work done on it. There we go. Yeah. So here's a close-up. And so this was a presentation piece to a man named Joseph Ingersoll from the Castalia Trout Club. The Castalia Trout Club is located in northern Ohio, not very far from Toledo. It still exists today, and it's dated May 6, 1904. And Joseph Ingersoll was the treasurer of the Castalia Trout Club. And so this was obviously a presentation piece from the club to him. And it has the U.S. coat of arms engraved here. But I think what really makes it neat, and which is why I fell in love with it too, is the scenes here of the trees, the stream bank, and then the trout going after the fly.
That's great.
And here you can actually see, here's the trout, there's the fly, he's going after it. But I love how the engraver showed the flow of water in the stream with the engraving. The technique is really remarkable on this piece. So just a great example. I still want to learn a little bit more about why this piece has this on it and has the U.S. coat of arms. So I need to go back to the Castalia folks. They verified that, in fact, Ingersoll was a member of the club at this time, but I want to try to find out a little bit more about his background to understand why they put that on the piece as well. And if you look at the design of the U.S. coat of arms on this piece, it's quite similar to the design of the coat of arms on the President Harrison White House set here. That was done by Dorflinger in 1891. Remember the tankard jug we saw being worked on in the stone wheel engraving department. So here's a wonderful example. With the bird on one side, you've got floral designs going around the bird, but really nice detailed representation of the bird. A lot of movement. The bird's coming down to land on the branch. The way his feet attach to the branch, just a great example of engraving. And then on the back side of this piece, you have this huge C monogram engraved on the back of the piece. And we see examples of these tankard jugs with different birds on them in magazine advertisements from the period. So another nice example of engraving done on these pieces. Most of this is all copper wheel engraving to get that level of detail. These are interesting pieces. So these pieces are transitional, where you have a combination of traditional cutting and then polished engraving. And so you have a pattern here at the top, pattern here at the bottom, but on the center panel you have engraving, and the detail on the engraving is really excellent. And you have combinations of a peacock on this side. You can see the peacock right there. And then also additional combinations that are quite similar in many respects to the Rococo design as well. And then polished, the engraving is polished to give it that nice rock crystal appearance. So nice combination of traditional cutting on this piece and then nice engraving as well. This example is in the special exhibit. We also have a smaller example, same pattern, same shape in the main museum, but with an owl and a village and a shipyard scene on it as well. And this decanter is another nice example where you've got engraving and then it's polished to give it that wrought crystal appearance with a combination of fern designs and designs again that are quite similar to the Rococo design on the alternating panels. And this decanter was a gift to us from John Viselli. John was a huge collector of decanters of all types, sizes, and styles, and he donated his Dorflinger decanters to us, and this was an example in his gift.
Jim,
Yeah.
go back. Pattern cut stopper.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So on a lot of these pieces, that's right. You'll have a pattern cut on the stopper as well. Yeah. All right. Here's another example. Now, Dorflinger called a number of these pieces in the names of his designs or patterns rock crystal. And this is a good example. It's done in pattern number 8, rock crystal. That's a pretty unusual pattern. We don't see it very often. So in this champagne glass, a nice example of Dorflinger's simpler rock crystal work. Here are two other examples where we have panel and fan on the tumbler, and we have panel and rock crystal on the plate. And so again, simpler stone engraved and then polished designs, but nice examples of Dorflinger's simpler rock crystal work. These two pieces were also gifts to the museum from Ellen Silberlich, who is, many of you locally probably know her. She's been very active in the Wayne County Arts Alliance. We've done a lot with her over the years, and she was generous enough to donate these pieces to us several years ago. And here we have rock crystal daisy, where you have the daisy design, the ferns, again, stone engraved and then polished to give the piece its design and its bright appearance. So another good example of Dorflinger's simpler rock crystal work. Now we get to some of the more interesting rock crystal work that Dorflinger did. This wine glass was included in John and David Dorflinger's collection. And when we first got this, the collection, Kurt and I both looked at this and we thought, boy, that's an unusual and odd stem and foot for a Dorflinger piece. We know it's got the label on it. We know John thought it was a Dorflinger piece, but is it really? It's just really different and unusual. This one's cracked. It's got a crack in the back of the piece. But you've got these arches, the engraved design, polished, so more true rock crystal, what we think of as rock crystal work. But as we did a little bit more work, we found that there is an identical glass in the collection of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and it was part of a gift from the Dorflinger Company to the Philadelphia Museum of Art in 1903 to commemorate Christian Dorflinger's 75th birthday. So now we're believers. We're convinced that this is a good example, and this is an early example because that would have been about 1903. We don't start to see some of the fancier rock crystal designs until a few years later, typically in the Dorflinger body of work, but this is a nice early example that points us toward some of the more elaborate pieces. And these are some of those. So this is Dorflinger's Italian Renaissance design. This design was so complex and difficult and costly that it was never put into production. So the only pieces that were made were factory samples. And there are a variety of them. I think we've come up with 8 or 10 or so that we know of. John Dorflinger kept most of them, and he thought that these were among the best things that the Dorflinger companies ever produced. So you have these panels, and then you have this elaborate engraving, and then it's highly polished. This, again, is a really unusual form for a Dorflinger piece. You have the solid stem, the solid knop, and the quatrefoil stem and foot. It's even engraved around the edge of the foot. Just really remarkable examples of what is really true rock crystal work. So this is the water goblet. This is our newest acquisition, and this was a gift, a partial gift to us from the Kohut family in memory of John Kohut. And I first saw this several years ago. And when we were doing some work with John, I think it was around the ACGA catalog reprint, and John said, next time you're up in Corning, he said, I've got a piece of Dorflinger glass that I wanted to show you. And he said, my real question is around the label. And so he showed it to me, and he said, I know what it is. And I said, yeah, you do, you're right. And he said, but, is that label genuine? And I said, well, it is a genuine Dorflinger label, but this was put on by John. Again, another example where he put a label on a piece because he wanted people to know that it was an authentic piece of Dorflinger glass. Typically, if it had a label, it would have been down here on the foot, and it would have been put on before it was actually sold, and these weren't sold. But great example of Dorflinger's engraving and then rock crystal work. And here is a view of the claret glass. So we actually have 5 pieces on exhibit upstairs. We have the wine glass, the claret glass, the goblet, a plate, and the champagne glasses as well. But just really remarkable work. And I tend to agree with John that it was among some of the best pieces that Dorflinger produced.
And where did John buy it?
He bought it at Brimfield. Yeah. And I don't know which Dorflinger family member it came from, but somebody got rid of it and it ended up at Brimfield. And so John was very proud of that. It was one of his, he loved telling the story about how he found it and what it was. It's a great piece. And again, here's a little close-up of the detail of the work on this piece. And the design has a couple of different elements as you go around the piece. You've got these floral designs within the arches, and then you've got this band up here, and then, and then back here you can see the little different design at the top as well. Yeah. This is another example that came from John and David Dorflinger's collection. A lot of people look at this and say, well, it's probably Sinclair, because Sinclair did more of this kind of work, but it has a Dorflinger label on the bottom. Now, this is true rock crystal work. You can see how deeply cut these vertical panels are going around the piece, and then engraved with the beaded design, the floral designs as you go around the piece, both the stopper and on the bottom. So this is a little cologne bottle, but it's a real gem in terms of the workmanship. And Dorflinger didn't produce that much of these true rock crystal designs that very deeply cut, then engraved, and then highly polished. Here's another view as you go around the cologne. And this is another non-Dorflinger piece. So this 2-piece punch bowl is another classic example of rock crystal, where you have these deeply cut pillars Imagine how thick that blank is to do these really deeply cut pillars, then engraved with the floral design and then polished as well. I got this piece several years ago from Ryan Fleischer, and he said, I've got this great Dorflinger punch bowl. And when I got it, I thought, probably not Dorflinger. The reason Ryan thought it was Dorflinger is John Dorflinger had sold it back in the 1950s to a man on Long Island, and he had the bill of sale for the sale. But John was always very careful. When he sold a piece of Dorflinger, he always wrote on the invoice, "This is a genuine piece of Dorflinger glass." And what he wrote on this one is, this is a unique example of rock crystal engraving, and a really fine example of the art. But he didn't say this is a piece of Dorflinger glass. And if you look at one of the punch bowls that that Hawks exhibited at the 1893 Paris exhibition, you will see the same shape. You will see these pillars. You will see the top of the base of the bowl cut the same way, the pillars on the bottom. Obviously, that piece was cut with the Russian design, and this one is stone engraved. But this is just a great example of copper wheel engraving and rock crystal workmanship of the period, probably 1910 to 1915. The best Dorflinger example of this kind of rock crystal work is in the Wayne County Historical Society. And it's a two-piece punch bowl in the same shape as the Annona punch bowl upstairs. And it is done in the same manner with these cut panels, not these curved pillars, but with cut panels and then deeply engraved and then polished. Probably the best example of Dorflinger's rock crystal work around. And if you haven't been to the Wayne County Historical Society, that piece alone is worth the trip. Yes, it has its own case, it has its own punch cups. It's a great piece. All right, I'm going to talk briefly about a few family pieces. Charles Henry Dorflinger, this is from his table service. Simple design, again with that nice engraving that matches the style of one of the pieces that we saw on that heavy flute sample piece. This was from John O'Connor's table service. And this is another one of those really deceptive pieces. Looks really simple. It's got its nice monogram OC on it. But what makes this so interesting are all those vertical lines. So when you're the engraver, you can't do one of those lines continuously. You're going to have to do part of it. You're going to have to stop. You're going to have to do part of it to finish it up. And you're going to have to do each one of those lines as you go around the piece. They're all perfectly straight. They're all perfectly spaced as you go around the piece. So it's one of those examples where it's deceptively simple, but for people in the trade who know what they were doing, they would recognize the complexity of the design. And this is another wonderful O'Connor piece. So this has his monogram OC on it with this great flowered border, or with thistles actually, around the monogram, and the engraved foot. But as you go around the piece, there's the monogram, a little bit more detail. You see the thistles. And as you go around the piece on the back, you've got a chicken with a wreath around it. And then on one side, you have a floral design. And on this side, it says, "From my wife." And on the other side, you have the date, December 21st, 1873. So we think this was a Christmas gift to O'Connor that his wife had made for him, and he liked it so much that he added that engraving, because it doesn't really fit exactly. It's added into the open spaces to commemorate the fact that she'd had that made for him. Great example of O'Connor glass and great example of Dorflinger's engraving in the time period. This goblet as well, the shape of the goblet is interesting, and then the engraving is interesting as well. The shape, very similar to the Centennial set that Dorflinger exhibited at the Philadelphia exhibition in 1876. The big decanter with the 38 wine glasses. So the shape on this goblet is very, very similar to the wine glasses in the Centennial set. And then you have these deeply cut ovals, 3 of them going around the piece, fine diamond designs around the outside and around the edges. And then this one has the monogram KMOC for Catherine Merritt O'Connor, O'Connor's daughter. And the family history is that O'Connor had this made for his daughter when she graduated from the seminary. And the other 2 panels have designs of birds and fruit and birds and flowers. And since we got this one, we got another one with a different monogram. And when we did the Hobstar article for Brilliant Weekend for this year, I included an image of this to add to a little interest in the article. And I got a note from Paul Borelli saying, hey, look at this. And he had another one with a different monogram on it as well. So they obviously must have done several of these and done them as special order individual pieces for individuals. This goblet, Lotta, it's apostrophe Lotta, we think maybe for Carlotta Dorflinger. Floral designs, nice border at the top, simple glassware, but it's all about the engraving. On the back, May 7th, 1878, engraved on the back in the wreath. So nice, interesting, we think Dorflinger family piece as well, and that was in John and David Dorflinger's collection. This piece, I really love this piece. This is the first anniversary goblet for Clotilde King. Clotilde King married Eugene Dorflinger in 1869, and she came from a glass family in Pittsburgh, so definitely part of the glass community. And Eugene made several pieces to give to her. The earliest dated piece of Dorflinger glass is a cologne bottle that was made for Clotilde King, and it's dated 1868. So very early cut piece out of the White Mills factory. And then the wedding goblet for their wedding is in the Corning Museum of Glass. That would have been made in 1869, and this one would have been made in 1870. So you have, I think I've got a close up, oh, I don't. So you have this border around the name Clotilde in the front. On the back, you have this really interesting design where you've got a heart in the center, an anchor, and a cross. So just a really interesting design in the cartouche on the back. And then on the sides, you've got floral designs on each of the sides. So this is in the special exhibit upstairs as well. And again, we're deeply indebted to the Everhart Museum for their willingness to loan us this for this year for the engraving exhibit. So we're very happy. And they turned out to be much more flexible in terms of their loan policies than the Corning Museum of Glass, because we didn't have enough time to borrow the Corning one. But someday it would be nice to reunite the two and have the wedding goblet and the anniversary goblet exhibited together. This goblet, simple ivy design around the top, and the monogram D, and made for Charles Dusenberry in Honesdale. And there are a number of these around. I think we've got 3 of them. And there are a number of them around. I think probably the Dorflinger Glass Museum must have one as well. But simple design, but nice example of simple engraving that enhances a piece and makes it personal for a special order set. Now I want to talk about color engraving. This is definitely not a piece of Dorflinger glass. This is Bohemian, and this is what started the color glass movement in America. So these pieces are actually stained glass rather than color case glass. So the red is stained over the clear glass. And the engravers in Bohemia started producing these pieces in the 1850s with US landmarks, or American landmarks, engraved on them. So this has the US Capitol building. Note the old dome So this is going to be more 1850s, before the Civil War and the new dome was added to the Capitol building. And these were hugely popular in America. So the Bohemian companies were flooding the American market with these pieces, and the American companies were going nuts. And they were basically saying, how can we compete with this? And so that's when we began to see a move toward more of the color cased examples in the 1850s to 1860s time period. And these were engraved. Jane Spillman did a number of articles about these pieces, and they were either engraved in America after they got here, or they were engraved in Bohemia from printed engravings that they used to copy. But you have ones of the White House, the Capitol building, other landmarks in New York and Philadelphia. They're interesting pieces in and of themselves, but they're important from the standpoint of kicking off the U.S. Industry, or American industry, in terms of producing color case glass and some examples of engraving in color. And two others of my real favorites in the show. You don't see that much engraved glass in America in color. And these two examples are really exquisite examples. So this green engraved to clear goblet has the locomotive on it. And the detail on the engraving on the locomotive is really remarkable. And there's a name on the side of the locomotive, John B. Smith. So John B. Smith was the president of the Erie Railroad. He was a friend of Dorflinger's. He was on the board of the Hawley Glass Works that Dorflinger owned. And this locomotive was made in Dunmore in 1892 as a prototype, and we think that Dorflinger made this goblet and the one I'll show you next as gifts to his friend to commemorate the development of this locomotive. Now, I should have shown the red one before I showed the green one, because the red one appeared at the Orlando ACGA convention 12 years ago, probably about 12 years ago, and it was exhibited, and the description said, engraved glass, maker unknown. And Kurt took a look at it and saw the name John B. Smith and said, I know who made that. Dorflinger made that, because of the John B. Smith connection. And so that's how we identified the red one, and then the green one appeared about a year later, and that's when we found the green one. Great example of engraved glass in color. Here are the sides. You've got a terrific floral design on the side. On the back, you have this interesting floral design as well. So just a remarkable example of Dorflinger's engraved glass work, and especially the rarity of these pieces being in color. Here's the red one. Now, the red one is owned by Paul Borelli. He generously loaned us the red one for this special exhibit. And Paul bought this goblet on eBay for $20 or maybe $18. And it was a horrible picture. It didn't even look like engraved glass. It was said, the description was etched glass, but Paul took a flyer on it, bought it, and then Kurt identified it and told Paul exactly what he had. Just a great example. It's identical to the green one, with same borders, same back, same sides. Just really a remarkable example. When I bought the green one, the first phone call I got was from Paul saying, do you want to sell it? I said, no. Yeah. Fortunately, mine had a little chip on the foot, which made it more reasonable than it otherwise might have been. Stone wheel engraving in color, probably the most famous examples Dorflinger produced were the Vanderbilt set. So I mentioned that Walter Graham came here in 1896, brought stone wheel engraving to the Dorflinger factory. The Vanderbilt service was produced in 1899, obviously the work of Walter Graham. It has grape leaves and grapes engraved on it and floral designs. The wine ewer has both, the flowers at the top, the grape leaves in the bottom. Dorflinger did the glassware. Two New York silversmiths did the silver. The set came in green, it came in colorless glass, and it came in cranberry as well. Here is the flower vase in the form of a loving cup with the grape leaves. Here's the water pitcher with the flowers, so it's the wine ewer that kind of unites the two elements together. Here's the insert for the water pitcher in cranberry with the stone engraved floral design around the top. And just great examples of Dorflinger's stone engraved, polished stone engraved work. These wine bottles, done very similar in design, simple flutes top and bottom, and then on the center panel the grape leaf engravings as well, and I think undoubtedly the work of Walter Graham as well, pretty contemporaneous to the Vanderbilt service. This picture, not identified pattern, Dorflinger Sterling on the spout, but another nice example, cranberry stone engraved to clear of Dorflinger's stone engraving work in color. A lot of Dorflinger's stone engraving work was done in color. This is a neat piece where you have stone engraving around the top of the glass, the thistle shape, and then kind of heavily cut, red cut to clear on the bottom of the bowl of the glass. This design doesn't appear in any of the Dorflinger catalogs, but it does appear in magazine advertisements. And this pair, again, rock crystal designs, stone engraved, polished, floral designs as well, cranberry, stone engraved to clear. I'm going to close with just a few other interesting examples of engraved work. Now, this one is really interesting. If you look at the engraving is superb, where you have the knight, maybe St. George, on horseback, the shield, the spear, these nice engraved borders around the bowl and down at the base. What throws me on this one is the shape. Really looks European to me, but if you look at that engraving, it is virtually identical to the engraving of the goblet in the Feller book, and so with a different shape on it as well. So the engraver, I think, was probably the same, but was this European or was it done on a European blank? I don't know, but the shape looks more European to me. This is Egyptian. We don't find very many of these. Mike Manganiella has one of these. I think he has a little larger one. This is about 4 inches high, this wine glass. But again, engraved, polished. Interesting example. The shape is very interesting in terms of the bowl, the stem, and this conical foot on the bottom as well. And then you have engraving around the top of the foot on the piece as well. So just an interesting example. It shows up in the listing of the Colonna patterns, and some of those were engraved. This little cordial, another cute little piece with a sort of a pineapple shape, unidentified design or pattern with the swags as well, and then engraving around the foot as well. This is the cordial. The Everard has 2 pieces, right, Nancy? I think a little bit the larger sizes, the wines.
Yeah, wine and then a little cordial, I think.
Okay, yes, exactly. So another nice example of a light, delicate engraving work that Dorflinger produced, but again, without an identified design. And then I'm going to close with 2 blockbusters. So the first, the Kennedy goblet and the wine glass. These were done, engraved by Hermann Neugebauer, Dorflinger's lead engraver, who actually ran his own separate shop in Indian Orchard. And he did the engraving and the design of this piece. There were originally, these pieces were part of a set of 12 goblets, 12 wine glasses, and John Dorflinger had the factory sample for the goblet. And in 1863, when President Kennedy came to Milford to dedicate the Pinchot Institute, the Pike County Chamber of Commerce purchased that factory sample goblet from John Dorflinger to present to President Kennedy. And eventually the presentation was made at the White House. We believe it was the last gift received by President Kennedy and acknowledged by Jackie Kennedy before the assassination. It's a wonderful example, and thankfully, because this factory sample was used as a gift for President Kennedy, John Dorflinger documented a lot about this design. And he talks about how he and Hermann Neugebauer looked at a book on early sailing vessels in New York and found the design for the ship, the galleon on the front of the goblet. And thanks to that information, we found the book, and we found the engraving that was used as the model for the ship here. It's done also in an unusual shape. This is not a usual Dorflinger shape. It's more like a Waterford shape, but a great example of Dorflinger's engraving work and a wonderful presentation piece with a lot of local history on it. Here's a close-up of the ship itself, and if you look at the engraving, Neugebauer did a superb job. He copied every detail with one exception. The one exception is, I think the engraving comes from the late 1600s, so it obviously would not have had an American flag on it. But Neugebauer added the American flag to the design. You have, again, these intricate borders, kind of reminiscent of the railroad goblets, reminiscent of the Italian Renaissance pieces in the designs that go around the piece as well. So just a great example, I think, of Dorflinger's copper wheel engraving work. And finally, this goblet, not Dorflinger, New England Glass Company, but this goblet was part of a set of 12 that Louis Vaupell engraved for the New England Glass Company for exhibition at the Philadelphia Exhibition in 1876. And Laura Watkins, in her book on Cambridge glass, describes this goblet to a T, every detail about it. And she points out that half of those 12 were either broken or stolen during the Philadelphia exhibition, and the remaining 6 were given or presented to officers of the company, officers and directors of the company. So that explains the initials here and the date, September 10th, 1876. So on the front of the goblet, you have the Bunker Hill Monument in Boston. On the side, you have a palm tree, you've got a ship. The detail on this is just incredible. It's really definitely reflective of Vaupell's work. On the other side, the pine tree. And then finally on the back, the Native American looking west. So the detail, the workmanship on this is really representative of the kind of work that Vaupell was doing. I think he probably was the best engraver working in America in the late 1800s. He did some fabulous color pieces that are in the Corning Museum, that are in the Boston Museum of Art as well. Great example of his work as well. So there are a couple of these nice little blockbusters to finish out that are part of the special exhibit as well. And so thank you very much. Okay.